The Wisconsin Badgers, led by head coach Luke Fickell, have just lost another assistant football coach this offseason. The fourth loss. What does that mean for this program? Is there a problem? Is it a bigger problem that they lost it to a big-time Big Ten program? Let's answer those questions. Let's break it down here. And good morning. Thank you for enjoying it with a six-pack, the Scotty Six-Pack, the only podcast talking all things Wisconsin sports with you 6 days a week. I'm your host, Kedrick Stumbris, and you can follow me on the website formerly known as Twitter at Kedrick Stumbris, and follow the podcast at Scotty Six-Pack for the latest updates in Wisconsin sports. While you are here on your podcast platform of choice, please leave a 5-star review, kind comments, and hit that bell to get notified as soon as we put a new episode live in your feed, including on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@Scotty6pack. And the next assistant football coach to leave Madison is Greg Scruggs, the defensive line coach that Luke Fickell brought with him to Madison. And it's a big loss. It's someone that Fickell had coached with at Cincinnati, had promoted through the ranks at Cincinnati. And Scruggs is an up-and-coming assistant. He has proven himself to be a valuable recruiter. He brought in 2 high-level talents in this last year's recruiting class, and Ernest Willard Jr. and Dylan Johnson, 3 4-star talents on the defensive line. And he also comes with some NFL pedigree. When he was brought to Madison, he had been coaching, an assistant defensive line position. That's a good pedigree to be able to sell recruits on. Well, you go ahead, you make some swings on recruits, you get a hit on swinging for those recruits when you're at Wisconsin, and other programs are going to start to notice. Like I said, he's an up-and-coming assistant coach. Well, if you're up and coming, you got to move up somewhere. And that promotion opportunity didn't seem like it was readily available at Wisconsin. And he goes and gets plucked by Sharon Moore, the new head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. That is probably the last thing Wisconsin would have liked to hear. It's one thing to lose an assistant coach to another big name program outside of the Big Ten, but you lose it to a Big Ten program, the defending national champions. That's where it hurts. And this deal is not done. It was first reported by Sam Webb of Michigan's 24/7 sports site, later confirmed by the good folks, Rohan over at Bucky's Fifth Quarter. But by all accounts, and by an account of a Curtis Neal, a current Wisconsin defensive lineman, tweet that just tweeted with a heartbroken emoji, it seems that this is done or nearing on done, and that Greg Scruggs is going to be on his way, and that's unfortunate. That's again an unfortunate assistant coach loss for Wisconsin. There is something to be said, however, for losing coaches to big-time programs. There's something to be said for losing coaches to jobs that are arguably better than your own. You want to be a place where, if you are a place where people are picking off assistant coaching talent, it means that you are a program that is finding, developing, creating excellent college football coaches. And they have done something for your program that is worthy of them getting a better job somewhere else. And there is some stuff tied to this, right? There is going to be some people that are going to say, see, Luke Fickell, this is why you should not have run all the Wisconsin guys out of town, because all the Wisconsin guys would have stayed. They don't necessarily leave for other jobs, but maybe it's because they weren't deserving of leaving for other jobs. I don't know. There is a side of this, which is Is there reason to be concerned? And I don't think so for that reason. I think that Wisconsin wants to have good talent, you know, stay or good talent develop, and good talent is going to leave at times. You would rather have that good talent stay, but sometimes it's going to happen. This past off season, it's not just Greg Scruggs who has left, but wide receivers coach Mike Brown left for the same position at Notre Dame. He had an existing relationship with Marcus Freeman there, dating back to their time at Cincinnati. Or I don't remember if it's Cincinnati exactly, but dating back to their time coaching together. They also lost safeties coach Colin Hitchler to the same position again over at Alabama. But it's Alabama. And Colin Hitchler was your best recruiter. That's where it really hurts, is that you're losing some of these guys who are great recruiters. It's not necessarily a bad sign for the program, but it's definitely an issue of you're going to have to see. Does Luke Fickell have the ability to replace these assistants and continue to find and develop great recruiters? Because that's ultimately where these assistant coaches matter the most. You also lose John Bicknell, Jack Bicknell, rather. Lose, yes, no, demoted. Maybe that's more like what it is. Who has been reassigned to a different position other than the offensive line coach. I believe it was just earlier this past week that Luke Fickell said where he's going to be reassigned to is still to be determined. It could be that he is not going to be with the program at all. Reading between the tea leaves there, it reads to me that Wisconsin wanted to get their own offensive line coach in. They appreciated Jack Bicknell, but wanted something different. They've done that. All the on-field coaching assistant spots are taken now. I guess, well, not anymore with Greg Scruggs gone, but they had been totally filled. And Jack Bicknell was given the opportunity to, not be fired, but go find another job elsewhere. It's a little tough. Or maybe they'll find a cushy, landing spot for him off the field. An analyst position of sorts. But all of these folks, are headed out for other reasons. Greg Scruggs goes to Michigan, which is a step up from Wisconsin. Mike Brown goes to Notre Dame, a step up from Wisconsin in terms of, I would assume pay for all of these positions, but at least prestige. Also seems that the scuttlebutt is Mike Brown may or may not have gotten along great with the Phil Longo, Wisconsin's offensive coordinator. And then Colin Hitchler, who takes a job at Alabama and Kalen DeBoer's staff down there as he builds that out due to Nick Saban retiring. And can't blame him for that. You can't blame anybody for going to take, one of the best spots that you could head to in college football. It is unfortunate, but it is a test for Wisconsin and a test for Luke Fickell early in his career to see how well can he adapt on the fly? How well can he continue to round out the staff year over year? How well can he continue to identify coaching talent year over year? Or did he just get it, pretty good in the first year? It is funny though too that Greg Scruggs tweeted out the Michael Jordan from The Last Dance meme, and I took that personally when Colin Hitchler decided to leave for Alabama. Well, now Sharon Moore called you to head over to Michigan, and you took that about 2 weeks later. Not 2 weeks. It's been about a month. Yeah. Maybe you should have just kept that one in the drafts, my man. But yeah, I think it's a little bit unfortunate for Wisconsin there, but I do not think it ultimately says anything. Indicates a problem in Wisconsin's program. Another interesting tidbit of Wisconsin football coaching news is that Jim Leonhard is headed back to an on-field assistant position. And like I kind of said on this show a couple weeks back when talking about the Packers defensive coordinator search, Jim Leonhard is in fact heading to the NFL, not back into the college ranks anywhere. Brett Bielema kind of confirmed a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, that it seemed that that's what Jim Leonhard was eyeing up as an opportunity if he were to enter back into an on-field assistant role. And he's going to be doing that as a defensive backs coach with the Denver Broncos. So off goes Jim Leonhard. Wisconsin fans, Green Bay fans can stop, scratching their heads a little bit. Maybe those defensive coordinator opportunities either weren't there or he didn't explore them this past off season. There wasn't really any rumbling about him getting interviews for any of these jobs, and leaves you to wonder if that is a Jim Leonhard would rather just be a position coach decision, or if NFL GMs, NFL head coaches weren't necessarily looking for Jim Leonhard to fill their coordinator position this time around. I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, that's off Jim Leonhard goes, thanks to a report by ESPN. So that's this big football news to start it. We gotta talk a little bit more about some of this other stuff that has happened this weekend overall for Wisconsin sports. We got to do a little Wisconsin sports weekend whip around and talk about what's coming up this week, because there's a lot coming up this week for Wisconsin. We're going to break it all down here. But first, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at TickPick, because TickPick is where I go and get tickets to any game that I want to go to. I'm going to use TickPick for a game that is coming up a week from today, actually. So I'm sure you'll hear more about that. I'll talk to you more about that as that game comes up. But the reason I use TickPick is because TickPick doesn't believe in hidden fees. When I see a price on my screen, it's the price I'm going to get. I'm never going to pay service fees, delivery fees, none of that nonsense when I use TickPick. And that makes it the best ticket service there is out there. I'm going to get the best price on tickets every single time over at TickPick, thanks to their best price guarantee. And if you use my link in the podcast description, you're going to save $10 on your first order too. So go to the Google Play Store, go to the Apple App Store, download the TickPick app. That's TickPick. Click my link in the podcast description. Click my link in the YouTube description and save $10 on your first order. Never pay hidden fees for tickets ever again. That's my link in the podcast description, my link that you can see on the screen now to save $10 on your very first ticket order on TickPick. Coming up this week on the show, we got a jam-packed week, quite frankly. I was looking at my my content calendar schedule, and we got a big week here. Big week coming right off a Super Bowl week, jumping right into the thick of college basketball season. People are really starting to pay attention. Catchers and pitchers report for the Milwaukee Brewers this Thursday, the day after Valentine's Day. Really, really big week. And so tomorrow we're going to have our show previewing Wisconsin basketball against Ohio State. Should have something written in there. Maybe not quite by the time you're listening to this right now, but we'll have a written piece up tomorrow at Badger Notes. Or sorry, not tomorrow, today at Badger Notes on Monday. A written preview piece for that Badgers-Buckeyes matchup, which is just huge after the Badgers really just basically no-showed at Rutgers on Saturday. Wisconsin's going to need that game. I'll be on site covering that game for Badger Notes, all the good pregame, postgame interview action. We'll give you a podcast from the Kohl Center that night before we wrap up. So we'll have that preview and then a recap show that will go into the feed on Wednesday. Thursday, we're going to talk Wisconsin women's hockey and talk about that with voice of the Badgers and friend of the pod, Noah Clark, who does play-by-play for the Badgers women's hockey team on 1070 The Game. That should be an excellent show. And then Friday, we'll do a Wisconsin basketball versus Iowa preview show. And then Wisconsin basketball versus Iowa recap show will go into your feed that afternoon after the game on Saturday. Still efforting a guest for that Wisconsin Iowa preview show. But The first thing we want to talk about is this excellent Wisconsin women's hockey team as we run through some of this stuff over the weekend real quick here, because they just throttled Bemidji State this weekend. An excellent, back-to-back shutout showing. I went to watch the game on Friday that Wisconsin played at Bemidji State. Kind of settled in after taking care of some chores around the house, and I settle in to watch right as the first period is ending, and it's already a 6-0 game. Just absolutely throttled bad. The Beavers. Bemidji State just does not have the defenders to hang with Wisconsin. Not a ton you can glean away from that series, unfortunately. But the Badgers took care of business and stayed up to pace where they were coming into the weekend with Ohio State. Ohio State still leads Wisconsin by 7 points in the WCHA standings. Wisconsin is going to need to get all 6 of the points in this weekend's upcoming series with Minnesota to have a chance at the regular season conference title. It looks like, and Wisconsin hosts Minnesota this weekend, and then we'll host Ohio State next weekend. And those are 2 big series as Wisconsin eyes a defense as they are the reigning national champions. Also, Wisconsin men's hockey has an excellent weekend. A pair of 3-2 wins over Notre Dame, a season sweep of Notre Dame, a come-from-behind victory on Friday night that was just electric to watch. Scored 2 real quick goals to tie the game in that one, and then scored late to win it. Just an excellent game on Friday night, and then another great one on Saturday. Wisconsin is traveling now to Ohio State this weekend. They'll travel to Penn State the following weekend. They have 1 more regular season series than the women's team does, as the Wisconsin men's team is 5 points behind Michigan State and leads Minnesota by 6 points in the Big Ten conference standings. And Wisconsin, the rest of the way, has Ohio State, Penn State, and then Michigan State. Ohio State and Penn State are the 2 teams which are the bottom 2 teams in the Big Ten conference this season, and they are chasing Michigan State atop the conference. So Wisconsin has a real chance here under year 1 of Mike Hastings to win a Big Ten conference title. They have to take care of business on the road against Ohio State and against Penn State, which Penn State has one of the most electric venues in college hockey. So that's always a tough one to come into, even though Penn State is not having the best year. But Wisconsin can take care of that business, and they'll come back for the last series of the regular season, be able to play at the Kohl Center, and maybe, just maybe, be able to play for a Big Ten title. And then finally, the Milwaukee Bucks kind of starting to find their groove a little bit, it seems, with an absolute throttling win over the Charlotte Hornets. And yes, the Charlotte Hornets aren't playing particularly well. They've lost 10 straight now, or at least that was their 10th straight loss when losing to the Milwaukee Bucks in a 120-84 victory for Milwaukee. But I think another thing to remember here is that when Adrian Griffin was the head coach of this team, they would, have some real close games with Cade Cunningham less Detroit Pistons. Detroit, the worst team in the league, and Cade Cunningham, their best player. So this is an improvement for what they had going on there. Jay Crowder gets the start in lieu of a Chris Middleton who was sidelined, and then I think another notable performer in that game was AJ Green, who had been getting some extended run with Doc Rivers at the helm at times. He had a bit of an unfortunate showing in 18 minutes. He got up 9 shots, all 9 of them from 3, but only hit 1. That was a little bit tough for him. Pat Connaughton played some solid minutes, nothing super impressive. Bobby Portis continues to do his thing, scoring even if a little bit inefficiently. So I know the Bucks are rolling a little bit. They're going to welcome the Denver Nuggets in to Pfizer Forum tonight. Looking like a, not really that expensive ticket at all on TickPick. I remember last year, this ticket was quite a bit pricier. Maybe that game fell on a weekend. I don't recall, but not a super expensive ticket if you want to get in to watch Giannis and Jokic go at it inside Pfizer Forum on Monday night. Go ahead, click the link in my podcast description, get $10 off your first order, and get some great seats for not that much by buying those on TickPick. Click the link in my podcast description to save $10 on your very first order with TickPick and never pay hidden fees again. I think that's going to do it for the show today, pretty much. Kind of quick and easy. Had to hit on some news there, but we got a big basketball game to preview. We're going to hit that right away. Follow the work over at Badger Notes. All that is going to be linked in the podcast description as always, because I'll be there inside the Kohl Center and hopefully not having to ask Greg Gard some tough questions after the game because Wisconsin needs a win. But stay tuned. We're going to cover it, win or lose, no matter what, and give you a full game breakdown tomorrow. And of course, you should be able to read something on Badger Notes published from me today. So thank you very much for listening to the Scotty Six Pack podcast. I have been your host, Kedrick Stumbris. You can follow me on the website, formerly known as Twitter, at Kedrick Stumbris, and follow the podcast at Scotty Six Pack for the latest updates in Wisconsin sports. While you're here, leave a nice review, 5 stars, kind comments. Really helps other people find the show and helps me do more of this great work for all of you listening. I really, really appreciate, the big increase in viewership and listenership that we've had lately. It has been excellent. And I can't say enough to all of you who have been listening, watching the show, liking, leaving comments on YouTube, all that great stuff. So please keep doing that. Watch on YouTube, youtube.com/@Scotty6pack, and hit the bell so you get notified every time we put new episodes in your feed, which we are doing 6 days a week here on the Scotty Six Pack podcast on Wisconsin.